Marc Golde, my next guest. His fingerprints are all over the Wisconsin music scene, and you might know Mark from one of the bands he used to play in. Maybe saw his name on the liner notes of one of your favorite albums. That's actually the first time I heard of him. Or it's possible that you've seen him on TV during Rock Garden Live. And either way, Mark has left his stamp on the Fox Cities, and he's also helped out just numerous Appleton bands. It's an honor to have Marc Golde on Core. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been in the business, I'd say probably most of your life.
Yeah, pretty much. I played my first bar gig when I was 9 or 10 years old, and that started the whole thing off.
You're from Merrill, Wisconsin.
Merrill, yep. I wasn't born there, but I think my folks moved there when I was 2 or 3, so it's my hometown.
So that's about 2 hours away.
Yep.
What was the scene like when you started? What got you interested in actually picking up an instrument?
Well, what interested me in music was my folks owned a tavern. It was very much now we'd call it a dive bar. Then it was like a mill rat bar. There was a mill right down the street, and all these guys would come in after work and have a couple beers before they'd have to go home and deal with the family. So, and the fashion was big clunky boots, flannel, grungy beards, which became popular with the kids a couple decades later. But we had this big console jukebox, and that was my shrine. There was something so attractive about this jukebox, and it had a carousel, and there was glass where you could see it pick up the record and drop it down, and the needle moving over. And I would climb onto the jukebox so I could press my ear against the speaker. The music was that attractive to me. Like, I wanted to climb inside the speaker to see what's going on there. And years later, it made sense to me that in the days of vinyl, that there is a physical path where if I were actually, you have to imagine this, hypothetically, climb inside the speaker, go out the wires of that speaker, down to the electronics, up to that piece of vinyl, back to the pressing plant, and have the negatives and positive presses, and that came off of a tape, and follow that tape back to the recording studio, onto that machine, out of that machine onto a recording console, through a microphone. I would be looking at John Lennon's nose. So I felt that kind of connection to recording and music at a very early age.
I know the Beatles made a huge impact on you.
Yeah.
When was the first time you heard the Beatles? Was it in the tavern?
No, I believe I had. The rule was anything that was too rock and roll for the jukebox downstairs, I got from my record player upstairs. So I had a couple Beatles singles, but I wasn't obsessed yet. But I remember I had Got to Get You Into My Life, and Helter Skelter was on the other side. And I may have had another one, but it was probably when I was 8 or 9 where the bug just hit me. And that was it. I need to know everything about these guys. I need to hear every song. I need to own every record. I remember a day where my brother and sister-in-law were moving to town for a couple months, and she had the entire Beatles catalog. And I didn't care that my family was moving around. It was that catalog that I wanted. So I had every Beatles record. And I've just been obsessed. Don't even try to beat me in Beatles trivia on any level.
Do you still buy all the new remastered issues?
Here's where it gets controversial. Is when I want to experience something, I want to experience it the way people did when it happened. Yes, they've improved. I'm making the quote signs. They've improved the sound on the remasters and the remixes and all this sort of stuff, and it's interesting to listen to. But to me, I want to hear that thing that changed the world, and this isn't that. This is a cleaned up version of that. It's a digital version of the Mona Lisa. I want to stand in front of the Mona Lisa, untouched, see every brush stroke, good or bad or indifferent. So I would much rather listen to an original vinyl through an old stereo system than anything that they've improved upon. And many people disagree with me on that, and I've been in many arguments about it, but I want the time warp.
So I don't want to jump ahead too much, but I want to kind of tie that in with your studio. So for a while, when everybody's going digital, you had one of the only studios in the area.
I was your grandpa's studio, yes. And I had a reputation for that, and I suffered for it because the style of vintage recording, I guess I call it, old gear, old methods, where you do it with your hands instead of a mouse. That has come in and out of fashion, and I've stuck true to it because I believe in it, and it comes around. Everything comes around, and it's like, whatever style of music you're doing, if people, if it isn't in fashion right now, it probably will be in 5 years, so.
So we'll go back to the Merrill days. Am I saying that right? Merrill?
Merrill. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
See, you're living in Merrill. When did you start performing music?
Well, my parents, their thing, they wanted to give me an unfair advantage in the world. So they wanted to start me young in something. And they tried a couple different things, and music is kind of what stuck. So Mom forced me into piano lessons at 5 years old, where normally you start at 7. And the teacher was like, he can't touch the pedals or spell his name. How am I going to teach him music? She's like, I'll teach him how to spell his name. You teach him how to play, kind of thing. The unfortunate thing and fortunate thing for me is that I was kind of born with an ear for music, like relative pitch and stuff like, and melody. So I was faking it the first 4 years into it. My piano teacher would play the piece that I needed to play next week, and I just memorize it. So I was never really reading music until the pieces got so long that I couldn't remember all of it. And then I was busted, and it was terrible. But I discovered the electric guitar. I was about 8 or 9 years old, and we had, mind you, Merrill's a small town. This is the late 1970s. There's not a lot of technology. We had one music shop, and it was basically an electronics store that had some records and some band instruments in back. And they always had kind of a row of acoustic guitars. And one day, me and my friends went to go check out the new records, and there it was. It was made by K. It was a copy of a Gibson SG in blood red. And I'd never seen anything so beautiful in my life, and I saw my future. That was it. It's all I could think of. That was it. That was it for me. That's what I'm going to do. My life has been chosen. Almost like the ceiling parted and God's light shined down on the thing. My mom made a deal with me that any musical instrument that I want, if I paid half, she'd pay the other half. So this thing was $75, and I worked all summer mowing lawns and doing whatever odd jobs I could to come up with my $37.50 or whatever. And I presented it to her. I'm like, here's my half. I want my guitar. What I didn't know is my folks were going through a bankruptcy and a lost business, and she didn't have the money. And so without telling me, because you don't break a promise to a kid. You just don't. So she had a garage sale, and I didn't know what was going on or anything. Just, put together anything you want to sell. At the end of the day, this truck pulls up, and she hands me an envelope. She says, hand this to that gentleman. And he gets in the back. I hold out the envelope, and he pulls out a guitar case and hands it to me. I'm like, there it is. And I literally slept with that guitar.
Do you still have it?
No, I wish I did. If I ever found another one, I would buy it for sure. But I practiced so much, I would fall asleep playing it. Mom had lots of pictures of me sleeping with the guitar. She thought it was cute. So then it was unbearable for me to live life not being in a band. I'm in 5th grade, and there are no bands for 5th graders. What do you do? So at this point, I had a drum set. I played piano and guitar. So I set out. I'm going to start a band. So I looked at school, like in gym class or whatever, and I'd see the coolest looking kids, boys, and I'd approach them and go, you know what? I'll teach you how to play drums if you play in my band. Okay. So I taught them all how to play, and we had our first gig the last day of my 5th grade in front of the whole assembly. And I even remember the set list. We did Saturday Night by the Bay City Rollers, Smoke on the Water, and some original thing, which is basically just a little riff.
Were you were the guitar player and singer for the band?
I wasn't the singer. Guy's name was Mitch. And it was interesting how I became a singer. We had a gig maybe a month or two later, we had a gig opening for an adult band. Maybe it was the first bar gig. I don't quite remember. But this thing used to happen in grade school and junior high that I didn't understand at the time, but kids would just disappear. Like they were abducted. And you would ask any teachers, what happened to Susie or what happened to Tim? And they didn't have an answer. It's like gaslighting. They just would not talk about it. I'm like, am I crazy? So one day we're getting ready to go to the gig, and I call Mitch's house, and his mom, picks up the phone, and I'm like, hey, does Mitch need a ride to the gig? She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Mitch, our singer, you're his mom. Gig tonight. We're opening for this band at the Legion Lounge, and he just disappeared. So my thought at the time is, you can't cancel a gig. We promised them they'd be there. So I quickly had to try to learn the words to all our songs and just make it through the gig. That was it. And we never found another singer. So it was me and some of the other guys in the band. We would share vocals like the Beatles did, but I never wanted to sing. It was never a desire. I just wanted to play my guitar and be done with it. But it happened because Mitch disappeared. Yeah. And the reason why these kids got abducted is child custody.
Okay.
Yeah, I learned later on that it would be like the father lives in Illinois and he got custody and bam, and none of the adults wanted to talk to the kids about it. So that's what
I was afraid of where that was going to
Yeah.
end up. So you played in the single band, or did you play in a few different bands with Merrill?
Well, our first band, we were called Avalanche. Mom named us because we practiced in my bedroom, and she said downstairs it sounded like an avalanche. And we had a lot of fun things. We played a parade and a bunch of bar gigs, and we weren't good, but our posters said Merrill's youngest rock band, which was not a lie. And but you learn, you learn so much in those early days, and to this day, people get upset. You're like, oh, you shouldn't have children playing bars and stuff. I'm like, number one, no kid is going to look at a drunk guy and go, I want to be like him. It just doesn't happen. And the experience is invaluable. So by the time I was 18, I'd been on the road. I had all this behind me. It was great experiences. And every time I see a young band like that, like Bad Habits, or there's some other ones that I'm working with now too, I'm like, my heart just swells up because I remember those days of doing it. And you don't understand exactly what's going to happen, but you make it work.
Is it kind of refreshing to see like the fresh crop of musicians sprout up every year? Yeah, it is. And it seems like it comes in spurts, and I don't know why, but there's this new crop now that I'm noticing, and it's weird because they're all obsessed with the music I was obsessed with. It's like everything Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Guns N' Roses, and then grunge. And they all worship Kurt Cobain, they all worship the Beatles, and this is from ages 16 to say 25. And for a while there, I thought this was normal because these are the people I've always been around. This is the music I've always worked on and stuff. Then it hit me. I'm like, wait a second. Rock and roll is not the popular music, and these kids are not doing the popular thing. And I asked one of the bands, I'm like, you guys weren't the popular kids in school, were you? They're like, no, So they're the weirdos now, where they, we were the heroes. Now they're the weirdos. And it kind of reminds me of like the Buddy Holly kids when I was in junior high. They had the thick rim glasses and wore a suit to school, and everyone thought they were just bizarre. Now I think that's the coolest thing, So yeah, that's the new crop now. Will it become a popular style of music again to the masses? I kind of doubt it. But it's kind of like when the Stray Cats and George Thorogood had their biggest hits in the early 80s, when the 50s music was not the popular thing. It's kind of like that. So, and I'm not really a champion for, you must learn our history and, things must be a certain way. Music evolves, it moves forward. It's just the way it is. I'm not going to complain about it. But I do relate to these people because I lived through it. They don't even know that I lived through it. I was them at one point. Do you have any insight on Paisley Bus?
Paisley Bus, I wrote when Jerry Garcia died.
Interesting.
And I was thinking about the Deadheads, where they had spent most of their adult life following the Dead. selling toast to get to the next town, and living in a Volkswagen bus and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, wow, Jerry died. What are these people going to do? They're all in their 40s. They have no job skills. They have no experience in the workforce. What are they going to do? So that's what the song is about. I didn't realize the band Fish would come along, and then they just follow them.
Got multi-whammy award winner Marc Golde in my studio.
Yeah.
We were talking about the other awards that you won. Can you tell us some of the other ones?
Yeah. My big pride is in 1990, I won second place in the Billboard Magazine Song Contest. And the finals judges were Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, Anna Nancy Wilson, and Frank Zappa. Yep.
Does Kent Walsh know that?
He does now.
That's pretty cool. That's what song was it?
It was never released. It was a song called "It's Over." I should probably re-record it at some point, but it was one of those songs written really fast. Basically, the story of the award was, I was at another songwriter's house, and he had this plaque on the wall. And it said, participant of blah, 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 Billboard Song Contest. And I guess they give out about 5,000 of those things. And I thought, it'd be really cool to hang a thing on my wall that says I'm a legitimate songwriter. So I sent in 3 songs, the least of which was that one. I didn't think that was the good song. And one day I got a letter in the mail that had to be not authenticated, but notarized and sent back. I'm like, I didn't even understand what that was. So did it, sent it back. And about a month later, I got this thing that said, you won second prize. And there was a phone number, and I called the number, and the lady on the other end, I said, hey, I got this thing in the mail saying I won something. I don't understand what this is. And she goes, she's flipping through some files. She goes, Mr. Golde, you've done very well. You won second place in our song contest. And really? And then I'm like, okay. And I'm like, ask questions. Like, how many participants were there? She says, about 25,000 worldwide. Wow. I'm like, whoa, wow. Okay. And it said the finals judges were blah, 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 blah. And she says, oh yeah, Frank was really cool. He's going to do it again for us next year. And I'm like, wow. And so I got a write-up in the magazine, obviously a certificate, and a Gibson Les Paul.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Of course, first prize was $25,000, which, whatever. But so that was like the proudest day of my life. That was just crazy.
Yeah, it's really cool, especially to know that those people heard and picked your song.
Yeah,
Cool.
they didn't go through all 25,000. Those
Right.
are the final. I may have been up 5 songs or something, but it was cool. Frank Zappa heard one of my songs and didn't hate it, which still blows my mind. Yeah.
We've got a question here, and of course, if you've got a question, you can call us at 920-358-0795.
Hello, Mark. Just curious, out of all the projects you've ever worked on, which one was your favorite?
Well, it would have to be Pudge, right? There's not one favorite, but I have pet projects. There's always about 2 projects that kind of hit me in a certain way. And it's usually the ones that have a budget, where you can kind of dive in and do stuff. And then, those go past, and then there's, 2 other projects that are always really good. The first time at this studio where I felt like we were getting somewhere was the Traveling Suitcase record. That was the one where, okay, there's some money here. There's obviously talent, songwriting talent, arranging talent. I was kind of excited to be in the facility I'm in. They were starting to just blossom as far as popularity, and the record actually started taking off on college radio. It broke the top 200 kind of thing, and then the date for South by Southwest, record labels start pushing their stuff. Like a month before South by Southwest, and it pushed it off the charts forever. And then the band imploded, and it was over. And I'm like, that was the last time I really felt like, I might have the big record here. And now I just don't get my heart broken.
That was a really solid album.
Yeah.
Did you play anything on the album?
I played Vibra Slap on that record.
What's a Vibra Slap?
The Crazy Train sound. Yeah.
Nice.
It's the only thing I played on the record because they had a keyboard player in Brandon, and they were self-contained. They knew what they wanted to do. I engineered that record. I didn't really produce it. They really produced it.
We did get a text question as well.
Okay.
And what advice would you have for a young kid interested in exploring music?
It's a very general term. Learn as much as you can. Don't wait for someone to teach you. We live in the information age, and learn everything about the business side, the artistic side, about your instrument or instruments. Don't be ashamed to take lessons. When I was a kid, there was no information. If I wanted to learn a guitar solo, I had to take a vinyl record, play the solo, try to do it in real time, move the needle back, move the needle back, move the needle back. But by the time I learned the solo, it had some real value. If there was some information I needed about music or anything else, like I'm really curious about this thing, I need to know about this thing, I would have to get on my bike, ride to the other side of town to the library, go to the card catalog, in that subject, and hopefully find a book about it and get into that book. And when I found that piece of information, it meant the world because you had to work for it. Now, you don't even have to type onto your phone. You ask your phone a question and it tells you the answer. So there's no excuses. There's zero excuses for not doing what you want in this world and achieving what you want in this world. So that's I get kids coming to me a lot of times going, hey, I want you to teach me everything you know. I'm like, why don't you know it already? It's out there. It wasn't there for me, so that's where I see, things are so easy now that people are getting lazy, and there are really no excuses.
So do the work.
Yeah, basically.
During the 80s, were you in a band called the Electric Bananas, or was that the 90s?
That was 90s.
90s,
Yeah.
Okay. And was that mostly mainly a cover band?
Well, we started as a cover band. We started as a joke. That's why the joke name. The name came from This Is Spinal Tap. Me and Tom Thiel have been fighting over who came up with the name, but it was me. There was just this place called My Place in Menasha. It was a beer bar. You couldn't even get a liquor license. The place was so divey. Run by this guy named Marshall. There's a Quick Trip there now. It's on the corner of Oneida and 10. And anybody could play there for like $75 on a Tuesday if you wanted to. Anybody. It didn't matter if you were good or bad or whatever. So I don't know. I was sitting around with Scott Schrader and Tom Thiel, probably at a bar just having drinks and shots. And we had this dumb idea like, hey, we can all play. Why don't we just go, screw off at Marshall's on a Tuesday night? And called ourselves the Electric Bananas, and we'd tell jokes in between songs and stuff. And we started doing it more and more and more, and it started to feel like a band. Except for we played covers, but we didn't do any of the covers like the original. We rearranged everything. So we would turn any Beatles song into a prog rock song, or Pink Floyd. We didn't have the keyboards and backup singers, so we'd have to do our own version of that. So yeah, and then the problem is we started to take it seriously eventually, and we got this record deal, a local record deal, with Studio Rat Records. I think it's Studio Cat Records. Just a tiny label in town before we even had songs written. So everything started to fall apart at that point. It's like, okay, we're going to be a serious band and do originals and do this sort of thing. And we didn't really, we weren't that. So we just took whatever songs I had kind of laying around that I was recording in my home studio and adapted them for the band. And we wanted to make it real slick. And we did a slick record. It was the first compact disc, independent compact disc in Wisconsin. And it had big layers of keyboards and vocals and all this stuff and pretty lyrics and all this crap. And a couple months later, I heard a song called Lithium by Nirvana. And I knew that my world was absolute bullshit at that point. And like, I forgot that's what music's about, not what we had just done. And it was just kind of fizzled from there. So at one point we did do originals, but that isn't the Bananas everyone remembers. They remember the early cover band.
It sounds pretty unique and kind of a fun thing to go see.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I've seen a lot of stuff about the Marc Golde show of shows.
Oh, yeah.
Was that kind of an early version? Got a call coming in.
Great.
Hello, you are on with Marc Golde.
Am I on the air?
You're on the air.
You are.
Mark?
Yeah.
First of all, thanks for doing this show. This is very, very, very cool.
I'm having a great time.
Cool. A two-part question. What was the original name of the Beatles?
The Silver Beetles?
Yeah. There you go.
I told you.
That's the only Beatles trivia question I could come up with. Oh, man. Is there a genre or a style of music that really presents a challenge to you, the one you're kind of apprehensive about taking on?
Not anymore. But there were two styles of music that really, really I didn't understand for a long time, and that was death metal and hip hop. And the cool thing, the hard thing and the cool thing about working in a commercial studio is that you have to work with every style because you can't turn work down. And I remember the heavy, thrash metal and death metal. I'd have friends that would record that stuff, and I'd be like, how can you even listen to it? It's just noise. It's white noise to me. And eventually I recorded enough bands, and one day I was recording this Viking folklore metal band. And they were hilarious.
Wow.
And the music sounded exactly like the stories they were telling, and it connected. It's like, that's what Vikings sound like, is dun, 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 a Viking's not going to sing like Paul McCartney. So I was laughing my ass off the entire session, and it hit me. I'm like, this music is amazing. I love it. And it got to me. And the same thing with hip hop. I record a lot of hip hop, and over the last 10 years, and now I finally get it, and I actually enjoy it. So,
All right.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again.
yeah, thanks for the question.
All right. So we're talking about the Marc Golde shows of shows.
Yes.
Is that an early version of Rock Garden Live, or did that eventually kind of morph into that idea?
I never saw it as that. But it did inspire some things with Rock Garden Live. The show of shows was me trying to put on this big theatrical show, with which I did, and it was a huge production, and it was great. And I lost a lot of money doing it. At the time, I knew very little about marketing. I didn't have a real world sense of what I can pull off or not. It was a little too much for me to chew on. But the show was great, and it's all on videotape or on video somewhere in a box, which I lost the last time I moved the studio, which I'll find eventually. So I'll put a movie together about it. It was a great show. But what it did inspire was me getting into video, because I wanted to do some advertising, some internet advertising, and I didn't want to pay a video company to do it. I thought if I buy a camcorder, which looked a lot like that one right there, a tiny little thing, I can just do ads myself and just do funny, quirky little things. And my thought is, I don't know what I'm doing, but content over quality. South Park was the inspiration. Like, South Park is the worst cartooning ever. I mean, it's embarrassingly bad. But the content is so great that you forgive the bad quality. And that was the same sort of thing. And once I held that camcorder and I put together my first video, and they're all online on these ads for the show, and they're funny. The first one I put together, I felt the power of video. I'm like, wow, between audio and a visual, I can be influential. I can do things. I never got it before. I wasn't thinking visual. And the lucky thing for me is, I guess my subconscious had been picking up on all this since the MTV era. That, okay, I actually have these skills, and I know how this is supposed to work without anyone telling me. So the show of shows inspired me getting into video, which inspired the TV show and all that. So, yeah.
And I would suggest everybody go check out your YouTube page. There's probably 100+ videos on there. And you did for a while. You were doing music videos for bands, and you did a video for a band called Party of Clowns that I really liked. And actually, I saw the video, and it got me listening to Party of Clowns.
Yeah.
Those are all on your site as well.
There's a ton of video content. At one point, I used to host all the videos that I did for bands, thinking it would help their numbers. And then, the whole YouTube thing exploded, and then it's more like, no, this belongs to you. You paid for it. It's yours. So I don't host videos I do now anymore, but I still do a ton of them. But yeah, there's some good old stuff in there. Yeah.
And Rock Garden Live, was that hard to get that all off the ground? Because I'd imagine the logistics that went into.
The interesting thing there is it wasn't hard to get off the ground. I was starting to tell bands that I got this idea, I'm here at this big studio where I can do stuff, and I can start doing shows. I was thinking like Midnight Special and Don Kirshner's rock concert sort of thing. And it was the Traveling Suitcase. Their final show, I decided to video that. And they're the ones who came up with the round concept of the people in a circle. And as soon as I put it together, I'm like, this feels like a TV show. So let's keep doing these. So I started booking more shows and doing that stuff, telling bands, I don't know what I'm going to do with this footage, but I'm thinking of doing a TV show. So I had enough of those come together, and I put together a little demo reel. You got a call?
We've got a question, but we'll get
okay.
to this.
I had a little demo reel, and one day, Mr. Brian Gottlieb from Tunderland was in the audience. And I'm like, oh, he's mine. He's mine. I'm going to talk to this guy. He'll be a sponsor, because he sponsors a lot of stuff. And I took him and his wife in the back room after the show, and I showed him the little demo reel. And he says, okay, I'm going to call you on Monday. I have connections. We're going to get this on television. I want naming rights. And we shook hands, and that was it. That was the whole deal right there. And he got it on the air. And so, yeah, it was that easy. And yeah.
As far as like the filming and the editing of the shows, how long does it take you to, all time together, how long does it take you for one show?
Well, day of the production, I start at about 10 in the morning, and I set everything up, and the cameras and the lighting and the chairs and the whatever audio and recording and all that. So it's a full day for me. That's why I tell the bands, when you're done playing, get out, because I'm at the end of a 12-hour day. So that's one day there. And then depending on the group, some groups are very easy in post-production. Some groups are not. It could take anywhere from a day to 2 days for post-production. So I usually look at it as 3 days per episode I have into it.
Okay, that's a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
Has it been easy to find bands? Because I think originally you were pulling from the Fox Cities and you've kind of branched out.
Well, the idea was the CW14 viewing area, so northeastern Wisconsin. Because it doesn't make sense to pull in a band from out of state or whatever, because it doesn't play in their area. Though I've let some in that are like super popular.
So you've had some big names in the studio.
I had a couple, yeah. Recently I had Scott Stapp from Creed and a band called Pop Evil. Who else? I've had some other semi-famous people.
You had Butch Vig in there recently.
Butch Vig, Brian Vander Ark from the Verve Pipe. Thanks to Crazy Todd. And Caroline Spine, dude. Yeah, so yeah, I don't remember the question.
I don't either, but do you enjoy seeing the look on people's faces when they walk into that studio and see the board for the first time?
Oh, yeah.
It probably doesn't get old.
It's cool. To me, there's the celebrity thing. Like anyone who doesn't know, I have this recording console where a lot of famous people have recorded on it, a lot of big records. And that's what people are impressed by. To me, it was interesting when like Butch Vig and Steve Marker were there. We talked about the electronics in the board, and that's what Steve stood at the corner of the board while Butch and I were talking, and then every 3 minutes he isn't even looking at us. He'd just go, "It's so beautiful." And so to me, it's like the sound of this board and the way it's built and all that, that's what gets me off. But everyone else likes the celebrity thing. So, and I have my list of celebrities, and I should have it memorized by now, but
I thought maybe you'd pull a list out of your pocket.
I do. I do every time. I try to do it in 3 breaths. And so, yeah, that's the fun part, I guess.
We had a question. Could you ask Mark if it's a mistake for bands to record before they are ready, or is recording something that can help a band improve?
Well, it could be a hard lesson if you're not ready. And it can be very depressing, and it could break up the band. But you should, I really think that you should record at home, whether it's on your phone. Just put the phone in the middle of the room so you can hear yourself back. Then, help out the guy who has a basement studio and go work with him or her for your first time, and move up the chain. So yes, it can be a mistake to go into a studio not knowing what you're doing, because there's money at stake. I can't record for free. My place is very expensive to operate. So, hey, if you have rich parents and they don't mind footing the bill, and you want the experience, you will learn. There's no doubt about that. You'll learn what you don't know. But I think there should be a hierarchy of or steps moving up as recording goes. But always record yourself. It's like looking in the mirror. How are you going to fix your hair if you're not looking in a mirror? Yeah.
How did you even start the studio? You were at a couple different locations before your current location, and I know before this you were at Walter Avenue in a little small building, which outside looked tiny. You walked inside, it looked bigger.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It was bigger on the inside than the outside.
Were you anywhere before that, or was it Walter Avenue?
At the top of the Law Street Hill.
Okay.
Right where there's if you're going up the Law Street Hill south, and you look to the left, the building there, I think it's a Realtors now. That was the first version of this rock garden. But I had a studio before that called Rock Garden Records, which lasted 2 months. It took me a year to build, 2 months to go out of business. I've learned my lessons through the years. And then before that, I worked at Bonsai Studio in Neenah, which is now the Walmart parking lot. And that was somebody else's studio.
Depressing.
Oh, no, I was glad to leave by that. It had run its course.
The current studio, did you get a lot of carryover equipment from the original locations, or did you wheel and deal and trade up? And
that's constant. That's a constant thing. Lately, it's been like, let's not spend any money if we don't have to, kind of thing. But the big thing in the new place was the console. Yeah. And at first, my thought was, how am I going to get that console in that Walter Avenue?
You've got a great video again on your YouTube page of them boxing it up at the location it was at, and then it ends with, will it fit through the opening, and then it's stuck.
Right. I had to take out a wall to get it in, and I couldn't finish the control room until the console was inside of it. So I'm going to have to take out walls again when it's time to leave.
Which hopefully won't be for a long, long time.
I hope so, yeah.
We had a question sent in. It's a two-parter.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the current music scene in the Fox Valley? Has it changed since Mile of Music? That's the first question.
Okay.
You want the second one right away?
Let's start with the first one.
Okay.
Mile of Music, what Mile of Music did is a couple things. It's not focused on local bands, so don't think that it is. It's more about touring acts and some locals, which is great. But it did two things. One, it brought art and commerce together. Rock Garden Live wouldn't have happened without Mile of Music showing businessmen that they can invest, and sponsor these things and get a benefit from that. So that's a direct result of Mile of Music. So thank you for that. The other thing is, for years and years, cover bands, and I don't mean to poo-poo cover bands because I've been in them. We've all been in them. They're an important part of our society, and they're part of the scene. So when I'm saying this, please don't think that I'm ripping on them. But original bands always had a hard time finding gigs. Where do you play? Where do you find an audience? And bars and agents and all the businessmen would always say, well, that isn't what the people want. And I said, well, you're not giving them an option. So it's kind of like saying, well, my dog loves its dog food. Look, it's eating. Like, well, put a steak next to it and see what it chooses. It's not going to like the dog food. And so I said, there's an audience. They're just not leaving the house because you're not giving them what they want. And so Mile of Music comes along, and all of a sudden, these people come out of the woodwork to watch original music. So you can't tell me that it isn't what the people want. It's not what those people want, kind of thing. So it's been very beneficial to our area. Yes.
All right, you ready for the second part?
Yes.
I believe you recorded the Green Bay Packers CDs of cover songs with changed lyrics.
Yes.
Any thoughts of doing another one of these CDs?
The Wedgies. We did 2 of those. That was back in the days.
Forgot about the Wedgies.
That was in the days of Bonsai. And I was a young professional recording engineer, and I was trying to prove myself, which is what that was. And the way you prove yourself is go, I'm going to recreate Bohemian Rhapsody. And that was quite the feat. But I was hungry, and I was like, I was kind of like a sled dog. Just get me in there, and I'd be in the studio for 24 hours straight, and sometimes I was. So that, on my end, was a way for me to try to prove to everybody that I can do this. And it was put together by Len Nelson at WAPL as a WAPL project, and that turned into the CDs as it grew, because it's an obvious slam dunk. You take Green Bay Packers and classic rock, and you put it together, and we live in Wisconsin, and that's, it's right there. We did huge shows back then, too, when people from all over the country would show up at these things. It was crazy. I do have a funny story. We did one live show at, and I'll get back to the question, too. We did one live show at one of the sports bars in the big room, and big production, big everything. We thought, we're a comedy band, so let's get another comedy band to open for us, which is Party of Clowns. Nice. Yeah, and what I didn't realize is our audience really took this music seriously. They didn't see it as comedy. Packer fans, So Party of Clowns was going to make a really big impression, and they decided to walk on stage wearing nothing but sneakers, diapers, no shirt, clown makeup, clown nose, and clown wigs. If you can imagine grown men, diapers, and clown faces. And they went up and did their set, and the place is packed. We've got 500 to 1,000 people there. They'd get done with the song, and you could hear a pin drop on on carpet. They hated them. They absolutely hated them. And I wish we had it on videotape. It was one of those classic nights. But no, there's no thought of doing that anymore. It's kind of like we've moved on and done that sort of thing.
Any predictions for the Packers?
I know. Who knows?
Are you a sports fan? Do you have time to watch sports?
If I happen to be sitting somewhere where the Packer game is on, I'll watch and I'll root them on, and it's fun, but I don't go out of my way.
Fair enough.
As close as I get is on Packer Sunday. If I'm at work, I'll keep a Google thing on so I can see the score. So,
thank you for those questions. Those came from DJ Bear, who hosts Amped Up on Wednesday nights. I forgot about the wedgies. There was that time period where like Packer songs were really huge.
We had competition. Yeah.
There was CWA, right?
Yep.
Two Sets of Attitude. There was another band that had a Go Packers Go song. I don't know.
Yeah. It was kind of a thing there for a couple years. But that was right when the Packers were on their way to the Super Bowl for the first time in 20, 30 years. And Brett Favre was, it was a real exciting time to be a Wisconsinite back then. Yeah.
Has there been a moment where you're sitting in your studio and you look around and it's just sort of crazy that you're at the point where you are now?
The thing is, if you're always looking forward, you never really see it that way. The closest thing I get is every once in a while, I'll be like walking, from point A to point B in the studio, and the lighting will be a certain way, and I'll see the piano and the nice drum set and this in the background. It looks so cool, and the big expensive microphone. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I always wanted. There it is.
Do you do a lot of recording of your own music right now?
Okay, now that's a whole thing coming up. I turned 50 this year and hit the midlife crisis really bad. I didn't see it coming. I just didn't see it coming. And I had to figure out where it's coming from. I mean, like, I'm really like, yeah. So after a lot of soul searching, it hit me that, you know what? I lost myself in this Rock Garden thing of, Rock Garden was always supposed to be a private studio, my Paisley Park, that paid for itself by recording other people. Well, if you want expensive things, they come with expensive price tags, and eventually your focus becomes business. And so for the past 10 years, I haven't recorded anything for myself. I haven't done any creative projects. So I'm like, I got to do something. This is crazy. And I have a lot of stuff around, like creative ideas and things. So right now, I've already started working on it. It's a movie project, which is based around music, not a conventional sort of movie sort of thing. And I have kind of a songwriting partner, and I can't say too much about it, but I'm gonna spend the next couple years chipping away at this, and I'm pretty excited about it because it's getting me creative again. And the cool thing about that is that I've spent so much time as an observer that I've got all that in my brain now. Of like, I've worked with so many different musicians, so many different styles of music, so many things, so many ideas that were thrown out, and they're all in my bag of tricks now. So, so yeah, I'm feeling really excited about midlife crisis is over. I can move on with my life. My purpose now is to kind of do this project now. So
You said we are not going to probably get to hear it or see it for another year or two yet.
yeah, it's gonna take a while because I'm paying for it myself and all that. So right now it's in the development stages, and it's gonna be kind of a sick, twisted, rated R sort of thing. but it's the big thing is I need to leave something behind, something artistic, and not just, hey, he helped a lot of people and did this thing, a couple generations, and that won't, yes, the influence will be there, but I really want to leave a stain on the earth. And so, yeah, that's that. That's kind of the whole thing we were talking about is my path was going to be as a musician, and I kind of fell off the rails at some point.
Did it go that way as a means to just make a living, or were you just sick of doing the band thing?
Well, when I did the show of shows, it was such a financial hit that it kind of scared me from doing big things. Because at the time it was like, well, I'm creative and I can make things happen, and I know all these people and blah blah blah. And yeah, I did make it happen, but that comes at a price, and I got kind of scared to do anything after that. So, what happens is, the wolf is always at the door. The studio is expensive. It's expensive to operate. So I have to come up with so many thousands of dollars every month just to break even. So it's like, it had been hard for me to justify spending a Sunday afternoon working on my own thing when somebody's waiting for their product, or, I need to make some money here to make that happen or whatever. And now I'm to the point where I can't afford not to do that, because what's it all worth if I don't?
Right.
Yeah.
I would like to bring up your father, who recently passed away. There was a really well-attended memorial service
That was great, yeah.
Fox Valley Technical College. I know we had Kurt Gunn on a couple weeks ago, and he performed a song there and said he was honored to do that. How did your father shape your life? Obviously,
it's my dad.
Right, it's your dad. But his experiences as far as what he went through, for those that don't know, he was a Holocaust survivor. He went around and did a lot of talks about it.
Spoke in schools and churches.
Thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, maybe.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of people knew your dad's story. I saw your dad 20 years ago and didn't know it was your dad until like a few years ago. I kind of put the pieces together.
Yeah.
But how is that loss? I mean, has it been a hard adjustment?
The hard part was when he was sick. When he passed away, it was an absolute relief, and I was praying for that day to come quick, because he was in really bad shape for a long time, and I knew it was the end. So it was like, things aren't going to get better. I didn't have a relationship with him anymore because he was kind of gone. So it wasn't that. It feels different now. Like it's weird because like he was sick for 3 years leading up to him passing away, where he wasn't really there anymore, and so I had lost that relationship, and he, my safety net was gone, though it didn't feel like it was gone, because his physical body was here. So once he finally passed, I called my half sister in California to tell her the news. She goes, "Oh, I guess we're orphans now." I'm like, wow, I didn't even think of it that way, So it's different, but it's not sad. And I said that at the memorial. It's like, don't send me your sympathies. It's like, I've had this guy in my life, and it was great, and it's great. It makes me different from other people having this, kind of lineage. So,
growing up, was he pretty open with the stories?
No. Actually, he always told me, one of these days I'm going to tell you my story. And the first time I heard his story was the first time he spoke in a school, which was in front of my class. He had written his book. He went down to Texas Folks had to make some money quick, and he had an old business partner that was doing something in the oil business. So went down to Texas, and at night he had time to start writing his manuscript. And he'd be sending it to my mom, and she'd translate his broken English and all that. And I didn't really read the manuscript because I was kind of young and it was over my head. So the first time I heard him tell his story was in front of my class, which made me superstar of the class, of course. But and then, yeah, we talked about it through the years and stuff. But it wasn't all. There were some things where I'd be distressed about something as a kid, and I can't compete with the Holocaust.
Right.
He was a little insensitive to that, and I didn't understand why. Well, now I do. It's like I had it pretty good, but I had it really good.
Is it hard when you're recording bands, like if you're sitting at the console and you've got an idea in your head that would improve a song? Is it hard to suggest that, or do you normally stay quiet? Like, what's your approach to?
It's a very, very good question. There's a thing that I had to learn, and it's my name is in tiny print on the back of the compact disc, and the artist's name is on big print in the front. It's not my project. Where early on, and I see a lot of other engineers making the same mistake, is you pounce on people and start interjecting yourself into their music. And a lot of people don't want that. They just don't want that. And sometimes artists have really goofy ideas that are just stupid. The dumbest, stupidest ideas you could possibly think of. And you would fight them tooth and nail to not do that stupid idea. And what you don't realize is sometimes that stupid idea is the hook of the song. It's what people like about the song. It's what makes them unique. So I've taught myself, because when you're eager and you want to engineer, it's kind of like you're at point A, you need to get to point B, and the only thing in your way is people. Get those people out of your way so you can make the record you want to make. And it's not your record. So now I have this thing. It happened 2 nights ago, where I'll make a suggestion, and if the artist or group doesn't like the suggestion, I let it go. And if I think that it's such a brilliant idea, I'll use it for something else. It's not my record. So I don't typically get involved musically. I used to. Kind of like, hey, if you change this chord to that chord, it could do that. All that's doing is suiting my taste in music, not theirs. For instance, I like great chord progressions because I'm a Beatles fan, right? Some people grow up their entire lives listening to Hank Williams and Johnny Cash that have the same 3 chords in every song. But it's beautiful music to them. There's nothing wrong with their taste in music. So there are some artists where I'm more involved, like say solo artists that aren't really complete with all their ideas, and I might help them with that or play on something or whatever. But more and more, I let the artists be themselves. And if they like a suggestion, great. If they don't, I get over it really quick.
How do you feel about bands that, with liner notes, they don't include everybody that worked on the album? Like when you work on an album and it comes out, do you typically get a copy of it?
I'll get a copy.
That's something that I struggle with is crediting. Like,
sure.
I think everybody should be credited. But how do you feel about that?
I don't give it much thought. I used to be really stuck on that of like, I need you to write producer on there because I produced this thing, and and now it's kind of like I've proven myself. You don't have to put my name on it if you don't want. I did the work. You paid me. You don't owe me anything. So I'm not caught up in that. I can see where other people would be, but it's just not my issue.
I'm going to start firing questions at you, so right at the end.
Okay.
Any strange studio recording stories with any bands?
I'm sure there's lots of them.
Crazy mischief.
Let's see. Crazy mischief. Oh, okay, I'll try to make it quick. The band Profane. They came in to record a song for a certain thing. That day I had 2 job shadows. They were 13 and 14 years old, these kids. And Kurt, the singer, wasn't going to be there till later, but he gave the band specific instructions of how he wanted the song to go. Well, they decided to change it against his wishes. And then he showed up and spewed out the most profane, no pun intended, profane and hilarious. I couldn't even begin. I so wish I was recording it. The foul stuff that was coming out of this guy's mouth as he's screaming at the band, veins popping out of his neck, red face, just ready to explode. And these two kids are in the back of the control room going, "This is cool. That's what I want to do for a living." I had to remind them that not every session is like this.
Best concert you ever went to?
Best concert? Wow, geez. My first one, Cheap Trick, only because it was the first one.
Where was that at?
It was Rib Mountain Speedway. It's probably called something else, near Wausau. I was 13 years old, and I'll try to make this as quick as possible. If You Want My Love, You Got It was their big hit. I love that song. They started playing it. I weaseled my way up really close to the front. I'm staring at Robin Zander. He's the most beautiful man I've ever seen in my life. And he sang the bridge, which is this emotional thing. And right at that moment, I'm like, I want to stand where that guy's standing. Right. That's, in other words, that's what I want to do for a living. And jump 20 years later, I get a phone call from program director at WAPL saying that Cheap Trick's playing their Christmas bash and they want the Marc Golde band to open. And we open the show. I load my gear out. I come back in. I run into this little blonde guy. He looks up at me. I look down at him. It's Robin Zander himself. He says, "Hey, Mark," calls me by my first name. There's no way I could process that in the moment, so I just kind of put that in my back pocket. He's like, "Great set." I'm like, "What? You were listening?" He's like, "Yeah, I was standing here the whole time. I really like your songs." I'm like, "Well, it's because I'm always ripping you guys off." He's like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "Yeah, no, quite literally I am." And later on that night, as I was trying to drink myself to sleep because it was the loneliest feeling on earth to do something huge like that and have no one to relate to, it hit me that I stood where that guy was standing for one night, and he was on the ground watching me. So dreams really do come true.
And that actually is a really good spot to end the show.
Yeah.
Where can people go to find out more about the studio or more about you and more about your music?
The technical stuff about the studio is rockgardenstudio.com. There's not a lot of fun there. It's all just kind of like, this is what the studio is. There's a Marc Golde Facebook page, a Rock Garden Studio Facebook page, and a Rock Garden Live Facebook page.
We'll put links to all of those.
Great.
For easy accessibility. Mark, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love talking about myself.
We love hearing about you. Hopefully have you on again sometime soon. Thank you to everybody that called in with questions and texted their questions. And we'll have the video up soon.
Awesome.
Marc Golde, thank you for joining us on Core on Code Zero Radio.
All right.